we need to arm them to the teeth so that if and when the Chinese decide to look at doing this, they'll say we have to come up with another solution. This is going to be far too costly.
We begin tonight with a new security threat just off our border in the Bering Sea. China and Russia conducting a joint naval military exercise near the coast of Alaska. It may have been the largest such flotilla ever to get so close to American waters. The U.S. immediately sent 4 destroyers and a military aircraft to shadow the ships, which never crossed into U.S. territory. But the surprise exercise was a reminder of China's growing military might and how an alliance with Russia could pose a real threat to America. Joining us now is defense and national security analyst and retired U.S. Navy Captain Chuck Nash. Captain, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you this evening, sir.
Well, thanks, Lindsay. It's nice to be with you.
Okay, so talk to us about how this growing partnership is an increasing threat to the U.S.
Well, what it does is it adds in numbers. And there have been a lot of criticism that, well, the Russians don't have that really good equipment, which they really don't. And that, well, the Chinese quality is not what the U.S. has, which it may not be. But as the Russian General Gorshkov once said, quantity has a quality all its own. And when you start talking about force on force, numbers count. They really matter. So when you put together Russia and China, you come up with 2 very large navies. The Russian Navy is not as capable as the Chinese Navy, but the Chinese Navy is the largest Navy in the world. And they plan on having double that number of ships in the near future. So they are preparing for war at a time when the U.S. Navy readiness and our ships and aircraft, Air Force, Navy, aircraft and Navy ships is at a very low readiness level,
Captain, who are they preparing for war against?
Well, I think what they're preparing for, Lindsay, is to make sure that if they decide to take Taiwan by force, that they will have such an overwhelming force structure that they will intimidate us and keep us from entering the fray and backing the Taiwanese, which is why what we should be doing now is forearming the Taiwanese so that it makes it such a painful decision for mainland China, the CCP, to actually launch a kinetic operation against Taiwan. In other words, we need to arm them to the teeth so that if and when the Chinese decide to look at doing this, they'll say we have to come up with another solution. This is going to be far too costly.
Do you think that there should be some consequence from the U.S. right now towards China? I mean, they initially started supporting Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine in this war. But at the end of the day, it seems like they're the one who have not been, they haven't had any repercussions for their support for Russia. Should that change?
Yeah, I think we need to make it very clear to the Chinese that that this support of Russia is destabilizing the world, quite frankly, because anytime you've got the threat of war like this, and war in Europe is not that rare an occurrence if you look back in history. So this thing could really spin out of control. One thing that we are doing is we are renewing our alliance with the Philippines and backing Filipino efforts to keep the Chinese out of certain atolls near their territory. There are 5 countries that share and claim part of the South China Sea as their exclusive economic zone. And the Chinese are saying, no, 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 your claims are all invalid. We own the whole thing. Well, that's not going to stand. It hasn't stood in any international body that's looked at it, court that's looked at it. But if the shooting starts, that's all that matters, right? Force is going to overwhelm any court order. So what we have to do, again, is make sure that we shore up these alliances now, not wait until things get out of control.
And here's tonight's other news you need to know. The public's interest in Donald Trump's legal problems is declining with each indictment, according to data taken from television ratings, social media, and internet search activity, including Google Trends. Interest is slowing down. Each of the 3 indictments had a spike in interest, but the spikes were smaller each time, indicating decreasing interest overall. America's credit card levels have hit an all-time high of over $1 trillion. Credit card balances just rose by $45 billion in the second quarter of the year. The chief credit analyst at LendingTree says it's only going to go up from here. What's driving it is inflation, higher interest rates, and how expensive life is. Massachusetts Governor Healey has declared a state of emergency to address the surge of migrants seeking shelter while they wait for work permits. The state is spending $45 million a month on expanded shelter services. She calls on the federal government to expedite work authorizations and to send financial aid. Proterra, an electric bus company, has filed for bankruptcy. The company has often been praised by President Biden, and the company's CEO says they have encountered economic headwinds. Commercially available genetics are now being used in dairy cows. The goal is to reduce methane emission. Cows emit methane, and new low methane genetic trait is being introduced. Methane is the second largest greenhouse gas in the world, and livestock produce roughly 15% of methane emissions each year. China has had its largest drop in exports in over 2 years. Sales to foreign markets dropped nearly 15% last month. China continues to struggle with reduced global demand and a domestic economic slowdown. Inexpensive factory labor in Asia is ending. Young people all across Asia, especially Vietnam and China, do not want to work in factories. Factories are now increasing wages and improving work conditions, including such things as better cafeteria fare and daycare for young children. Companies like Hasbro, Mattel, and Nike rely heavily on Asian factories for their products, and they all say production costs and therefore prices are on the rise. Luxury car maker Porsche faced immediate backlash for a television commercial it made to commemorate 60 years of the iconic Porsche 911. The setting for the ad was Lisbon, Portugal, but it evidently edited out the statue of Jesus Christ, called Cristo Rey, that overlooks the city. An alert social media user pointed out the edit, and Porsche almost immediately removed the ad from distribution. They said in early version, the Cristo Rey statue does not appear. We are truly sorry and can fully understand the hurt this has caused. The company has now launched a new version, which does in fact show the Christ statue on its pedestal, arms stretched out over the city.